Imagine discovering that your HOA president poisoned your disabled child's therapy dog because she didn't believe his disability was real. What would you do? This is the harrowing tale of how I, a single mother, fought back against a heartless tyrant who nearly killed my son's lifeline, exposing her cruelty to an entire community. The sound of my son's anguished cries still haunts me, a chilling reminder of the day our lives turned upside down. I'm about to take you on a journey of betrayal, resilience, and justice, one that will leave you questioning how far you'd go to protect what matters most. Welcome to Daily Narrated Stories, where we share tales of courage that inspire change. Hit that subscribe button to join our growing community. Picture yourself in my shoes, a frantic parent, racing to save a beloved animal while your child spirals into a breakdown. That afternoon, the air turned thick with dread as I heard my 14-year-old son, Liam, scream, a raw, guttural sound that pierced my soul. I dropped the laundry basket, my heart pounding like a drum, and sprinted to the backyard. There, Liam knelt in the grass, his body shaking as he cradled his therapy dog, Shadow, a gentle black lab with soulful eyes. Foam dripped from Shadow's mouth, his body convulsing in violent spasms, his once vibrant eyes now clouded with agony. "Mom, Shadow's dying," Liam sobbed, his voice breaking as he rocked back and forth, his hands trembling, a telltale sign of the panic attacks that plagued him. I scooped the seizing dog into my arms, my own hands shaking with a mix of fear and fury. In that moment, I knew exactly who was responsible. The HOA president, Margaret Ellison, a woman who had made our lives hell since we moved in. The anger that surged through me was a wildfire, burning away any doubt. This wasn't just a petty neighborhood dispute. It was a deliberate attack on my vulnerable son through the animal that kept him grounded. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back to the beginning, where this nightmare started. My name is Sarah Mitchell, a high school counselor and single mother to Liam, who was diagnosed with autism and severe social anxiety at age 6. For Liam, the world is a chaotic storm of sensory overload. Bright lights feel like daggers in his eyes, loud noises like explosions in his skull. I'll never forget his first major meltdown. We were at a bustling county fair, the air thick with the smell of fried food and the clamor of carnival rides. The flashing lights and blaring music overwhelmed him, and he collapsed, hands clamped over his ears, screaming as if the world itself was attacking him. Onlookers stared, some muttering about bad parenting, while one man sneered, "He just needs a good spanking." That day shattered me, but it also led to Liam's diagnosis, a bittersweet clarity. His brain processed the world differently, and what felt like a normal day to others was a battlefield for him. The years that followed were a grueling marathon of trial and error, medications that dulled his spirit, therapies that helped but couldn't fully bridge the gap. As a single mom juggling work and Liam's needs, I often felt like I was drowning, collapsing into tears in my car after late-night IEP meetings, wondering if I was enough for him. For years ago, Liam's therapist suggested a therapy animal to help him cope. I was hesitant. Our cramped apartment barely had space for us, and I'd seen too many families misuse the therapy animal label. But the therapist showed me studies proving their impact on autistic children, and I couldn't ignore the hope in her voice. We connected with a nonprofit that trained therapy animals, and that's when Shadow entered our lives, a calm, intuitive black lab who seemed to understand Liam's needs before even I did. Shadow wasn't the typical therapy dog you'd imagine, no golden retriever or service vest, but his gentle presence worked miracles. Before Shadow, Liam's meltdowns were a weekly torment, sometimes so severe he'd bang his head against the wall or claw at his arms until they bled. With Shadow, those episodes dropped to almost nothing. The dog would nuzzle Liam when his anxiety spiked, providing deep pressure that grounded him. At night, Shadow slept curled against him, his steady breathing lulling Liam into a peaceful sleep, free of the nightmares that once plagued him. Liam's teachers saw the change too. "It's like he has a safety net now," his English teacher told me at a parent conference, her eyes warm with admiration. "He can ask for a break when he's overwhelmed instead of shutting down completely." Shadow wasn't just a pet. He was a lifeline, legally recognized as an emotional support animal under the Fair Housing Act, complete with certifications, a psychiatrist's letter, and a harness identifying his role. He He was Liam's anchor in a world that often felt like it was trying to sweep him away. 6 months ago, I landed my dream job at Evergreen Academy, a school for kids with special needs in Portland. The position offered better pay, smaller classes, and resources I'd only dreamed of. The catch? We had to relocate. I found a charming townhouse in Pinewood Estates, a gated community with top-notch schools nearby. The move was tough on Liam. Any change in routine sent him spiraling, but Shadow made it bearable, curling up beside him as we unpacked boxes, his presence a quiet reassurance. During the home buying process, I noticed Pinewood's strict no pets policy. I submitted Liam's medical records, Shadow's ESA documentation, and a letter from our lawyer outlining our rights. The real estate agent confirmed everything was approved, and we received written confirmation from the HOA management. I thought we were set for a fresh start, but that hope crumbled just 2 weeks after we settled in. The first HOA meeting was a masterclass in intimidation. Margaret Ellison, the HOA president, ruled with an iron fist, a polished woman in her late 50s with a sleek brunette bob and a smile that never reached her eyes. She silenced residents with sharp procedural rules, her voice cutting through the room like a blade. When a young couple raised concerns about rising maintenance fees, she shut them down with a cold, "That matter is closed," her tone daring anyone to challenge her. Even the other board members seemed to shrink under her gaze, their faces pale as they avoided her piercing stare. The air in the room felt heavy, charged with an unspoken fear that made my skin prickle. When it was my turn to introduce myself, I mentioned Liam and Shadow, explaining his role as a therapy dog. Margaret's expression turned icy, her eyes narrowing as if I'd just insulted her personally. "Therapy dog?" she said, her voice laced with disdain, each word dripping with skepticism. I don't recall approving any animals. I kept my tone calm, drawing on years of navigating tense parent meetings, though my heart raced. Shadow isn't a pet. He's an ESA for my son, who has autism and anxiety. I submitted all the paperwork during closing. Margaret's lips pressed into a thin line, her gaze cold and unyielding. "We'll need to revisit that. Pinewood maintains its property values by keeping animals out. They're a nuisance." The treasurer, Clara Bennett, a wiry woman with a permanent scowl, chimed in, her voice sharp and accusing. "The old board might have let things slide, but we've tightened the rules." I forced a smile, my heart sinking as I felt the weight of their judgment. "I understand, but ESAs are protected under federal law. Shadow is trained and certified." Margaret tilted her head, her voice now dripping with mockery. "Autism. I saw your son outside yesterday. He looked perfectly fine to me." The room grew deathly silent, a few residents shifting uncomfortably in their seats, their eyes darting between us. My blood boiled, the familiar sting of ignorance cutting deep, but I'd faced this kind of dismissal before. "Many disabilities aren't visible," I said, my voice steady despite the anger clawing at my chest, my hands gripping the edge of my chair to keep them from trembling. "That's why we rely on medical documentation." Margaret waved a dismissive hand, her manicured nails catching the light as she brushed off my words like they were nothing. "We'll discuss this in executive session. Too many people claim anxiety to bend the rules." She air-quoted anxiety, her tone mocking, and I felt a surge of protective rage so intense I could barely breathe. But I knew a public showdown wouldn't help, so I sat down, my mind already racing with plans to contact my lawyer the moment I got home. After the meeting, a few residents offered quiet support, their voices hushed as if they feared being overheard. Margaret's intense, an older woman whispered, her hands nervously twisting a handkerchief. "Don't let her get to you." But no one dared challenge her openly, their fear of her wrath palpable in their averted gazes and hurried steps as they left the room. The harassment started the next day, a relentless campaign that felt like a declaration of war. A notice arrived, claiming Liam had been seen walking Shadow in the common area, a $200 fine for violating the pet policy. It was true, Shadow's routine included short outdoor walks, but the notice ignored his protected status, twisting the truth to fit Margaret's agenda. Then came accusations of pet waste in our fenced backyard. Impossible, since Shadow was trained to use pads indoors, his routine as disciplined as any service animal. Another notice complained about an unauthorized animal visible through our windows. as if I should hide Liam's therapy dog from the world, forcing him into the shadows to appease Margaret's whims. Each letter bore Margaret's sharp signature, her handwriting a taunting flourish that seemed to mock our very existence, threatening escalating fines that grew more absurd with each passing day. The weight of each letter felt like a stone on my chest, a constant reminder of the battle we were facing just to exist in peace. It was clear she wouldn't honor Shadow's legal status, instead using petty violations to drive us out, her cruelty cloaked in the guise of community standards. I responded with copies of Shadow's documentation and excerpts from the Fair Housing Act, each packet meticulously assembled with highlighted sections and legal citations. But the notices kept coming, a relentless barrage that left me feeling like I was shouting into a void. The stress began to wear on me, my nights filled with restless dreams of losing Liam to a meltdown I couldn't stop, of Shadow being taken away by faceless figures in HOA uniforms. I installed a security camera in our backyard, a knot of unease growing in my stomach as I watched the footage each night, searching for any sign of Margaret's next move. My lawyer sent a cease and desist letter to the HOA, warning of legal consequences for continued harassment, but I knew Margaret wouldn't back down so easily. Liam, always perceptive to tension, began to withdraw, his once bright eyes clouded with worry. "Is Shadow in trouble?" he asked one evening, his voice small as he sat on the couch, clutching Shadow's collar like a lifeline, his fingers tracing the worn leather as if it could anchor him. "Do we have to leave?" My heart ached as I knelt beside him, brushing a lock of hair from his forehead, my own voice thick with emotion. "No, honey. We belong here, and so does Shadow. Some people just don't understand yet." But inside, I was crumbling, the fear of another move, a change that could unravel Liam's fragile stability, gnawing at me like a relentless beast. The situation worsened at the next HOA meeting, a gathering that felt more like a tribunal than a community discussion. Margaret stood at the front, her posture rigid, her eyes scanning the room for any sign of dissent, her presence a dark cloud that seemed to suck the air from the space. She announced a new policy requiring support animals to undergo quarterly reviews with hefty fees, $500 per review, a sum that felt like a slap in the face for families already stretched thin. The audacity of it took my breath away, the blatant disregard for federal law a clear message. She would stop at nothing to get rid of us. I stood up, my voice firm despite the tremor in my hands, my heart pounding so loudly I was sure everyone could hear it. "That violates federal law. ESAs aren't subject to such restrictions." Margaret smirked, her lips curling with a smugness that made my skin crawl, her eyes glinting with a cruel satisfaction. "You're exploiting loopholes, diminishing real disabilities," she said, her voice low and venomous, each word a calculated strike. The room grew tense, a palpable discomfort settling over the residents, their silence a testament to Margaret's iron grip on the community. No one spoke up, their fear of her wrath a tangible force that kept them rooted in their seats. Her reign of fear was palpable, and I realized she thrived on silencing dissent, her power built on intimidation and control. In the parking lot afterward, an elderly man named Henry Carter, a retired mechanic with a quiet demeanor, approached me, his steps slow and deliberate. His hands were calloused, his eyes kind but wary, as if he'd seen too much in his years at Pinewood. "Ms. Mitchell," he said softly, his voice barely above a whisper as he glanced around to ensure no one was listening. "Be careful. Margaret doesn't take kindly to being challenged." I frowned, my stomach twisting as a chill ran down my spine. "I'm just protecting my son," I said, my voice steady but my heart racing. He nodded, his gaze dropping to the ground before meeting mine again, a flicker of concern in his eyes. "I know, but the last family she targeted, the Garcias, with a daughter who used a walker, they left after their accessibility ramp was vandalized. Twice. No proof, but Margaret had complained about it being an eyesore for months at every meeting." My stomach churned, a cold sweat breaking out on my neck as I processed his words. "You think she was behind it?" I asked, my voice trembling slightly. Henry shrugged, his shoulders heavy with the weight of unspoken truths. "All I know is the HOA cameras were down both times it happened. And Margaret, she's got a way of getting what she wants." His warning echoed in my mind as I drove home, a cold dread settling in my bones, the streetlights casting eerie shadows that seemed to mirror the darkness closing in around us. That night, I upgraded our cameras to cloud-based ones, ensuring Margaret couldn't tamper with the footage, my fingers trembling as I set up the system, the weight of Henry's words pressing down on me. I also kept Shadow indoors, closing the blinds, a change that confused him and heightened Liam's anxiety. The once happy routine of Shadow basking in the sun while Liam read to him was replaced by a tense confinement, and I could see the toll it took on them both. Shadow paced the living room, his tail low, his soft whines a heartbreaking plea for normalcy. Liam had his first meltdown since the move that weekend, triggered by the disruption, his small body shaking as he sobbed into Shadow's fur, begging for things to go back to normal. I held him close, my own tears falling silently as I whispered promises I wasn't sure I could keep, the guilt of failing to protect him gnawing at my heart. The days that followed were a blur of heightened vigilance and mounting stress, each moment tinged with the fear of what Margaret might do next. I began noticing Margaret and Clara walking past our townhouse more often, their heads bent together as they pointed at our windows, their whispers carrying an ominous weight that made my stomach churn. One afternoon, I caught Margaret lingering near our backyard gate, her eyes darting around as if checking for witnesses, her posture tense and predatory. The sight sent a shiver down my spine, and I couldn't shake the feeling that she was planning something sinister, her presence a dark cloud that seemed to follow us everywhere. I started keeping a detailed log of every interaction, every notice, every suspicious moment, my notebook filling with timestamps and notes that felt like a lifeline in the chaos. Each entry was a small act of defiance, a way to reclaim control in a situation that felt increasingly out of my hands. I also reached out to other neighbors, hoping to find allies in this isolating fight. A young mother named Elise, who lived 3 doors down, invited me over for coffee one morning, her kitchen warm with the scent of freshly brewed coffee and the sound of her toddler's laughter. Her toddler played quietly in the corner as she spoke in hushed tones, her hands wrapped tightly around her mug. "Margaret's been a nightmare since she took over," Elise confided, her voice trembling slightly. "Last year, she fined us $300 for leaving our stroller on the porch, said it cluttered the aesthetic. When we pushed back, she started leaving passive-aggressive notes on our car." Elise's story wasn't as severe as ours, but it confirmed Margaret's pattern of control, her need to dominate every aspect of the community, no matter how small the infraction. "I'm sorry you're going through this," Elise added, her eyes soft with sympathy as she reached across the table to squeeze my hand. "If you need anything, I'm here." Her support, though small, gave me a flicker of hope in an otherwise bleak situation, a reminder that not everyone in Pinewood was under Margaret's spell. Another neighbor, Mr. Thompson, a widower in his 80s who tended to the community garden, shared a similar sentiment, his voice gravelly but kind. "She's got everyone scared," he told me one evening as I helped him weed a flower bed, the scent of damp earth grounding me in the midst of my turmoil. "I've lived here 20 years, and I've never seen anyone rule like she does. She once tried to ban my rose bushes, said they attracted bees that threatened the kids. I fought her on it, but it wasn't easy." His stories, coupled with Henry's warning, painted a chilling picture of Margaret's reign, a woman who used her position to enforce her own warped sense of order, no matter the cost to others. The more I learned, the more determined I became to stop her, to protect Liam and Shadow from her cruelty. But the harassment intensified, each new notice a fresh wound that deepened my resolve. One morning, I found a handwritten note slipped under our door, the handwriting unmistakably Margaret's. "Keep your dog out of sight, or there will be consequences." The threat sent a jolt of fear through me, and I couldn't help but wonder what consequences she had in mind, my mind racing with images of Shadow being taken away, of Liam's world crumbling around him. I showed the note to my lawyer, who advised me to keep it as evidence, but urged caution, his voice calm but firm. "She's testing you," he warned. "Don't give her a reason to escalate further." But I couldn't shake the image of Shadow, innocent, loyal Shadow, being targeted by someone so cruel, his soft brown eyes filled with trust even as danger loomed. The thought kept me up at night, my mind racing with worst-case scenarios, the darkness of our situation pressing in from all sides. I began double-checking the locks each night, my hands trembling as I moved through the house, the quiet creaks of the floorboards amplifying my fear. Then came that fateful Wednesday, a day that would shatter our fragile sense of safety. Liam had a rough day at school. A surprise assembly had triggered sensory overload, leaving him shaky and withdrawn. His teacher had called me at lunch, her voice gentle but concerned. He spent an hour in the sensory room, but he's still struggling, she said. It might help to get him home early. I picked him up, my heart aching as I saw the exhaustion in his eyes, the way his shoulders hunched as if the world was pressing down on him, his small hands clutching his backpack like a shield. I suggested he sit with Shadow in our fenced backyard to decompress, hoping the familiar routine would soothe him, the soft grass and warm sun a balm for his frazzled nerves. From the kitchen, I watched them through the window, Liam reading to Shadow, the dog's head resting on his lap, a rare moment of peace that warmed my heart. The afternoon sun cast a golden glow over them, the light filtering through the leaves of the oak tree in our yard, and for a moment, I let myself believe we could weather this storm. I turned to grab a glass of water, the sound of the faucet drowning out the world, when a strange, guttural whimper cut through the air, followed by Liam's piercing scream. A sound so filled with terror that it stopped my heart, the glass slipping from my hand and shattering on the floor with a sharp crack that echoed through the house. I raced outside, my heart in my throat, my bare feet slipping on the linoleum as I stumbled through the back door. Shadow was convulsing violently, foam bubbling from his mouth, his body rigid with pain, his whimpers a heartbreaking contrast to his usual gentle barks. Liam was in full meltdown, rocking and screaming. "Make it stop, Mom. Make it stop." His hands flailed, his face red and streaked with tears, as he tried to hold Shadow's trembling body, his small frame shaking with the force of his sobs. I wrapped Shadow in a blanket, the dog's whimpers slicing through me like a knife, and scooped Liam into my arms, his sobs shaking us both as I stumbled to the car, my mind a chaotic whirlwind of fear and rage. I sped to the emergency vet, breaking every speed limit, the world outside a blur as I gripped the steering wheel with white-knuckled hands. At every red light, I glanced back at Liam, his face streaked with tears as he whispered, "Don't die, Shadow. Please don't die." His small hands clutched Shadow's blanket, his knuckles white, his voice a desperate plea that broke my heart into 1,000 pieces. I reached back to squeeze his knee, my own voice cracking as I said, "We're almost there, baby. Shadow's going to be okay." But I wasn't sure I believed it. Not with Shadow's breathing growing shallower, his body so still it terrified me, the weight of my fear pressing down like a physical force. At the vet, Dr. Emily Carter took Shadow into emergency care while her assistant, a kind young woman named Mia, helped calm Liam, who was inconsolable, rocking in the waiting room chair, his arms wrapped tightly around himself. He was fine, Liam hiccuped, his voice raw from crying, his eyes red and swollen as he stared at the floor. "We were just reading," and then he started shaking. Mia knelt beside him, her voice soft as she offered him a stuffed animal to hold, a small gesture that brought a flicker of calm to his storm, his fingers clutching the plush toy like a lifeline. I stood nearby, my hands clenched into fists, trying to hold myself together as the minutes stretched into an eternity, each tick of the clock a reminder of how close we were to losing Shadow. After an agonizing wait, Dr. Carter pulled me aside, her expression grim, her eyes dark with a mix of anger and sorrow. "Shadow's been poisoned," she said, her voice low and steady, but her eyes betrayed her fury. "It's ethylene glycol, antifreeze. The amount in his system suggests it was intentional, likely mixed with food." The words hit me like a punch, stealing the air from my lungs, the room spinning as I gripped the edge of the counter to steady myself. Someone had deliberately tried to kill my son's therapy dog, a dog who wasn't just a pet, but a lifeline for Liam's mental health. The realization washed over me in waves, each one colder than the last, the malice behind such an act too monstrous to comprehend. "Will he make it?" Liam asked, his voice barely a whisper as he shuffled closer, his eyes red and swollen, his small frame trembling with fear. Dr. Carter's expression softened as she knelt to his level, her hand resting gently on his shoulder, her voice warm despite the gravity of the situation. "We're doing everything we can, sweetheart. The next 48 hours are critical. She stood, turning to me as she outlined the treatment. For fluids to flush the toxin, dialysis to support his kidneys, and round-the-clock monitoring. A grueling process that would cost over $3,500. I didn't hesitate. Shadow was worth every penny for Liam's well-being. But the financial strain added another layer of stress to an already unbearable situation, the numbers swirling in my mind like a storm I couldn't escape. As Dr. Carter spoke, my phone buzzed with a text from Henry. Saw Margaret toss something in your yard this morning around 9:30. Thought you should know. The message sent a jolt of rage through me, but also a strange sense of clarity, the pieces of the puzzle falling into place with a sickening click. This wasn't an accident. It was a calculated attack, a betrayal so vile it made my skin crawl. I turned to Dr. Carter, my voice low but firm, my resolve hardening with every word. I need you to document this officially. I know who did this, and I'm pressing charges. She nodded, her jaw tight, her eyes flashing with determination. Animal cruelty is a felony here. I'll provide a full report and testify if needed. We've also preserved samples from his stomach for toxicology. That night, after leaving Liam with my sister for support, I sat at my kitchen table, the house eerily quiet without Shadow's soft snores, the absence of his presence a gaping wound in our home. I made calls, each one a step toward justice. To the police to report the crime, to my ex-husband, Michael, a documentary filmmaker fiercely protective of Liam, and to a disability rights lawyer, Karen Foster. Michael answered on the first ring, his voice thick with concern as I explained what had happened, my words tumbling out in a rush of fear and anger. I'm on the next flight, he said without hesitation, his tone fierce with determination. We'll make this right, Sarah. His support was a lifeline, a reminder that I wasn't alone in this fight, even as the darkness threatened to swallow me whole. While waiting for Michael, I researched Margaret, my fingers trembling as I scrolled through her online presence, each new discovery fueling my anger. What I found was a shocking contradiction. She was the diversity officer at Horizon Innovations, a tech firm lauded for its inclusivity, her LinkedIn profile a carefully curated facade of compassion. She boasted about her work with disability advocacy groups, featuring photos of her at charity galas, smiling as she accepted awards for her commitment to inclusion, her smile as polished as her lies. The hypocrisy made my blood boil. A woman who championed diversity by day was targeting my disabled son by night. Her actions a grotesque betrayal of everything she claimed to stand for, a betrayal that cut deeper with every word I read. The next morning, Michael arrived, his camera gear in tow, his face set with determination, his eyes blazing with the same protective fury I felt. We're going to make this airtight, he promised, hugging Liam tightly as my son clung to him, seeking comfort in his father's familiar presence, his small arms wrapped around Michael's waist. Michael set up in our living room, turning it into a makeshift command center as we pieced together our case. Papers and laptops spread across the coffee table like a battlefield map. I also called Margaret, recording the conversation legally in our state, my heart pounding as I prepared to confront her. I know you poisoned my son's therapy dog, I said, my voice steady despite the storm inside me, each word a weapon I wielded with precision. She laughed, a cold, hollow sound that sent a chill down my spine, her confidence a slap in the face. That's absurd. Maybe if you kept your mud indoors, it wouldn't eat things it shouldn't, she said, her voice dripping with disdain. I pressed further, my heart pounding so loudly I could barely hear my own words. The vet confirmed it was antifreeze in food we don't use. Shadow doesn't roam. He was in our fenced yard. Her tone turned smug, her arrogance infuriating, her words a taunt that fueled my resolve. You can't prove anything. Your son looks normal to me. This anxiety nonsense is just an excuse to break our rules. Her words cut deep, each one a dagger aimed at Liam's very existence, a dismissal so cruel it took my breath away. So you don't believe my son's disability is real? I asked, my voice trembling with barely contained rage, my hands shaking as I gripped the phone. She scoffed, her voice dripping with contempt, each word a venomous barb. I believe people like you make it harder for real disabilities to be taken seriously. That dog was a problem, and now maybe you'll follow the rules. Her casual admission stunned me, but I had what I needed, her own words, recorded, condemning her, her arrogance blinding her to the trap she'd walked into. She thought her status made her untouchable, but she'd underestimated me, and I was ready to make her pay for what she'd done. Over the next few days, as Shadow fought for his life in the veterinary ICU, we built our case with meticulous care, each piece of evidence a brick in the wall we were constructing around Margaret. Michael interviewed Henry, who provided a sworn statement about Margaret's actions, his voice steady as he recounted seeing her sneak into our yard, his words a lifeline in our fight for justice. Our cameras captured her that morning, a can of dog food in hand, the same brand she fed her own dog, as seen on her Instagram, where she'd posted a photo captioned, "Spoiling my pup with his favorite treat." The connection was damning, a direct link to the poison that nearly killed Shadow, a piece of evidence so clear it felt like a gift. Dr. Carter's report confirmed the poisoning, detailing the antifreeze found in Shadow's system and the deliberate nature of the act. Her words a stark reminder of the cruelty we were up against. I filed complaints with the police for animal cruelty and trespassing, the Housing Authority for Fair Housing Act violations, and Horizon Innovation's Ethics Board, attaching Margaret's recorded confession as evidence of her discriminatory behavior. Each submission a small victory in a battle that had taken so much from us. To add depth to our case, I reached out to the Garcias, the family Henry had mentioned, my voice hesitant as I explained who I was, my heart pounding as I waited for their response. Mrs. Garcia's tone was weary but kind as she shared their story, her voice trembling with the weight of memory. "Margaret made our lives hell," she said, her words heavy with pain. "Our daughter, Sophia, needed that ramp. She has cerebral palsy, and it was the only way she could get in and out of the house independently. But Margaret called it unsightly, said it lowered property values. Then the vandalism started, paint thrown on it, bolts loosened. We fixed it twice, but after the second time, we couldn't take it anymore. We moved." Her words hit me hard, the parallels to our situation chilling, the pain in her voice a mirror to my own. "Did you ever suspect Margaret was behind it?" I asked, my voice soft, my heart aching for her. Mrs. Garcia sighed, a sound filled with years of regret. "We couldn't prove it, but the timing, it was too convenient. And she'd made her feelings clear at every meeting. We felt so alone, like no one would believe us." Their story added weight to our case, painting a pattern of Margaret's cruelty, a woman who targeted the vulnerable, using her authority to drive them out of her perfect community, her actions a testament to her heartless ambition. I thanked Mrs. Garcia, promising to keep her updated, and hung up with a renewed sense of purpose, my resolve hardened by the shared pain of another family she'd hurt. As I compiled our evidence, I wrestled with guilt that threatened to consume me, the weight of my doubts a heavy burden. Had I missed signs of Margaret's malice? Could I have protected Shadow sooner? The questions swirled in my mind, each one a sharp stab of self-doubt that left me reeling. I remembered a moment a week before the poisoning. Margaret had stopped by under the pretense of checking on our landscaping, her eyes lingering on Shadow with a cold intensity that I'd dismissed as my imagination, her smile a mask that hid her true intentions. Now, that memory felt like a warning I'd ignored, and the weight of that realization made my chest ache, the guilt a bitter taste in my mouth. I also struggled with how to support Liam through this ordeal, his pain a constant reminder of my failure to shield him from this nightmare. He spent hours sitting by the window, staring at the empty backyard where he and Shadow used to play, his silence more heartbreaking than any meltdown, his small frame hunched with a grief I couldn't ease. One night, as I tucked him into bed, he looked up at me, his eyes filled with a fear I hadn't seen since his early diagnosis, his voice trembling as he spoke. "What if Shadow doesn't come back?" he whispered, his voice breaking. What if I'm too much for him?" The question broke me, and I pulled him into my arms, tears streaming down my face as I whispered, "You're not too much, Liam. Shadow loves you, and he's fighting to come back to you. We're going to get through this, together." The emotional toll was immense, but I channeled it into action, determined to ensure Margaret faced the consequences of her actions, my grief and guilt fueling my resolve. Michael and I worked late into the night, piecing together a timeline of events, cross-referencing Margaret's movements with our camera footage and Henry's statement, our living room a battlefield of papers and determination. We also reached out to other neighbors, hoping to uncover more stories of Margaret's overreach. Each conversation a thread in the tapestry of her tyranny. One couple, the Parkers, shared how Margaret had fined them repeatedly for their son's basketball hoop, claiming it disrupted the neighborhood's aesthetic. "She wouldn't stop until we took it down," Mr. Parker said, his voice bitter, his hands clenched into fists as he spoke. Another resident, a single father named Daniel, told us about a time Margaret had threatened to evict him for painting his mailbox a non-approved color, bright blue, a shade his daughter had chosen before she passed away from leukemia, a color that held her memory like a precious gem. "It was all I had left of her," Daniel said, his voice breaking, tears welling in his eyes as he spoke. Margaret didn't care. She said it clashed with the community standards. These stories, each one a testament to Margaret's tyranny, fueled my resolve, their pain a mirror to my own as I realized how many lives she'd touched with her cruelty. She wasn't just targeting us. She was a predator, preying on anyone who didn't fit her rigid vision of perfection, her actions a dark stain on the community she claimed to protect. As we gathered more evidence, I couldn't shake the feeling that there was still a piece of the puzzle missing, a lingering question that kept me up at night. I decided to dig deeper into Margaret's past, reaching out to a former Pinewood resident who'd moved away years ago, my fingers trembling as I typed out the message. Through a community Facebook group, I connected with Lisa, a woman who'd lived in Pinewood during Margaret's early days as president, her profile picture a bright smile that belied the pain in her voice. "She was always controlling," Lisa told me over the phone, her voice tinged with resentment, her words heavy with memory. But there was one incident that stood out. A family with a visually impaired son, they had a guide dog. Margaret tried to ban the dog, claimed it was a safety hazard. The family fought back, and Margaret, she got creative. Their car tires were slashed, their windows egged. They left within a month. Lisa's story sent a chill down my spine. The pattern of escalation all too familiar. The cruelty of Margaret's actions a dark thread that ran through every story I uncovered. Did anyone ever prove it was her? I asked, my voice tight, my heart pounding as I waited for her response. "No," Lisa admitted, her voice heavy with regret. But everyone knew. She had a way of making things happen without getting her hands dirty. The conversation left me with a sinking feeling. Margaret wasn't just cruel. She was calculating, a master of plausible deniability, her actions cloaked in the guise of community standards. But this time, she'd made a mistake. She'd underestimated me, and I had the evidence to prove her guilt, a weapon I was ready to wield with all the fury of a mother protecting her child. With our case nearly complete, I turned my attention to Shadow's recovery, calling the vet every few hours for updates, my heart in my throat with every ring. Dr. Carter's reports were cautiously optimistic. Shadow was responding to treatment, his kidney function stabilizing, but he wasn't out of the woods yet, the uncertainty a heavy weight on my shoulders. I shielded Liam from the uncertainty, telling him only that Shadow was getting better, not wanting to raise his hopes too soon, my own fear a constant companion as I waited for news. But the waiting was torture. Each passing hour a reminder of how fragile our situation was, the silence of the house a stark contrast to the life Shadow brought to our lives. Margaret was suspended from Horizon Innovations within days of our complaint, her pristine reputation crumbling under the weight of her actions, the news a small victory in a battle that had taken so much from us. Local media picked up the story, framing it as a scandal about disability discrimination. An HR executive who preached inclusion while targeting a disabled child, her hypocrisy laid bare for the world to see. The headlines were relentless, each one a nail in the coffin of her career, and I watched with grim satisfaction as Margaret's carefully constructed facade began to crack, her downfall a testament to the power of truth. But the fight wasn't over yet. The HOA board, led by a shaken Clara, called a meeting at my lawyer's office, with Liam's therapist present to explain his needs and Shadow's role in his life, her voice steady as she outlined the importance of therapy animals for children like Liam. The meeting was tense, the air thick with unease as Clara and the other board members shuffled in, their faces pale, their eyes avoiding mine as they took their seats. They apologized profusely, claiming Margaret had acted alone, her actions not reflective of Pinewood's values, their words a hollow attempt at absolution. They agreed to cover Shadow's $4,500 vet bills, revise their policies to explicitly protect ESAs, and host a mandatory disability awareness workshop for residents. Each concession a small victory in a battle that had left us scarred. Clara resigned on the spot, her hands trembling as she handed over her badge, her voice barely above a whisper as she muttered her apologies, her eyes downcast as she left the room. I secured a letter ensuring our compliance for any future housing needs. A small but significant victory in a battle that had taken so much from us. A piece of paper that felt like a shield against future threats. Margaret faced felony charges for animal cruelty and trespassing, her once untouchable status reduced to a cautionary tale, her name a whisper on the lips of a community she'd terrorized. Horizon Innovations fired her after confirming her actions violated their values, her career in tatters, her future uncertain as she faced the consequences of her cruelty. Her lawyer offered a settlement, guilty plea, a donation to an autism charity, and community service to avoid a trial that might distress Liam, a compromise that felt like a bittersweet victory. After consulting his therapist, who warned of the emotional toll a trial might take, I accepted, prioritizing Liam's healing over a public spectacle, my heart heavy with the weight of the decision. But the scars of this ordeal would linger, a reminder of the cost of standing up to someone like Margaret, the pain a constant companion even as we moved forward. Shadow pulled through after a week, coming home to a tearful Liam, who'd made a welcome home banner with paw print stickers, his small hands trembling with excitement as he hung it over Shadow's bed, the colorful paper a bright spot in a world that had been so dark. "He still loves me," Liam whispered, as Shadow licked his face, resuming his role as if nothing had happened, his tail wagging with a joy that brought tears to my eyes. Watching them, I felt a weight lift. Victory wasn't just about Margaret's downfall. It was about Liam feeling safe again, his world restored by the presence of his faithful companion, the bond between them a beacon of hope in the aftermath of our storm. The community transformed in the months that followed, the air lighter as Margaret's shadow finally lifted. I joined the HOA board, determined to ensure inclusivity became a priority, not just a buzzword, my voice a steady presence in meetings that once felt like battlegrounds. Neighbors who'd stayed silent under Margaret's reign apologized, their voices heavy with regret as they shared their own stories of fear, their words a balm for the wounds we'd carried. One man confessed, "My sister has epilepsy, and her service dog changed her life." I should have spoken up, his voice thick with emotion as he reached out to shake my hand, his grip firm with newfound resolve. Another neighbor, a grandmother named Ruth, admitted, "I was too scared to say anything, but I saw how Margaret treated you. It wasn't right." Her eyes soft with an apology I graciously accepted. The shift was palpable, a collective exhale after years of intimidation, and I felt a flicker of hope for the future, a sense that we were building something better from the ashes of Margaret's tyranny. Liam, inspired by the ordeal, created a school project on invisible disabilities, presenting it to our community with Shadow by his side, his voice steady as he spoke, a far cry from the trembling boy who'd once feared he was too much. "Not everyone's struggles look the same," he said, Shadow leaning against him, a living testament to their bond, his presence a quiet strength that bolstered Liam's courage. "Shadow helps me when my brain gets too loud." His words moved the room to tears, sparking conversations about accessibility that rippled beyond our neighborhood, a wave of change that started with one brave boy and his dog. Henry became a regular visitor, teaching Liam about the neighborhood's history, his gentle presence a balm for us both as we began to heal. His stories of Pinewoods past a reminder of the community we were rebuilding. Reflecting on this journey, I realized our fight was about more than saving Shadow. It was about showing Liam that his needs matter, that his disability is valid, and that he deserves a world that accommodates him. It's a lesson in courage, standing up to systems of power, even when they seem unbeatable, can create ripples of change that touch lives far beyond your own. We turned pain into purpose, proving that resilience and love can overcome even the darkest cruelty, a testament to the strength we found in each other. Have you or someone you love faced discrimination because of an invisible disability? Share your story in the comments. We'd love to hear how you found strength in the face of adversity. Your voice matters, and together, we can build a more inclusive world, one story at a time. This experience taught me that fighting for justice isn't just about winning. It's about creating a space where the most vulnerable can thrive without fear, a legacy I hope to leave for Liam and others like him. Liam's project led to 5 other HOAs adopting similar awareness programs, and daily narrated stories helped amplify our message, shining a light on stories that inspire change. Let's keep this momentum going. Subscribe now to Daily Narrated Stories and help us reach 1,000 subscribers this week. Don't miss out on more life-changing tales of courage and hope. Hit that button, comment your thoughts, and join our community. Today,